Okay, welcome Freedom Prep Academy employees to this training. Today we're talking about handling food safely. So let's get right into it. All right, first of all, why is food safety important? Why do we care? Why are we even having this training? Well, there are about 53,000 hospitalizations and 931 deaths each year in the US caused by foodborne illness. And we do not want one of our kids in the school to be a part of the statistics. So it's really important that we know these things and practice them in our kitchens. So first we're talking about time temperature control for safety foods. That's a mouthful, but we can just shorten it to TCS foods. So these are foods that have just the right environment for bacteria to grow. So I have a quick list here of some TCS foods. They're typically animal products, but also include like raw bean sprouts, baked potatoes, tofu, sliced melons, and rice isn't on this list, but it also includes that. So these are foods that we really need to watch out for and make sure that we are keeping them in the safe temperature zone and not leaving them out of that temperature zone for longer than 2 hours. Okay, so here's that temperature zone. So 41 degrees to 135 degrees. We want to stay out of that range for less than 2 hours. And so we need to keep that in mind whenever we're reheating or cooling down foods. So we need to use proper techniques so that we can reheat foods and cool them down within 2 hours. So some methods that we can do with that is a blast chiller. Unfortunately, none of our kitchens have blast chillers. So we can do ice baths, which is when you fill up a sink or a big bowl with ice and water and you put whatever food you're trying to cool down into a container and you stir it as it's in that ice bath. We also have ice paddles that you can use. Remember that it's gonna take longer to cool down if it's in a big container, so putting it in smaller containers is better. If we're trying to reheat food, a microwave can be a good option, or just the stove or the oven. What we don't wanna do is use a holding oven, because that's not gonna get it up to the right temperature quick enough. All right, so these are safe minimum internal temperatures for certain foods. So we have to cook some foods to a temperature to where it's going to be safe. And I have a list and chart of the different temperatures here. Take a glance over that. I know it's kind of hard to remember, so we're going to be doing an activity later that's going to help kind of solidify this knowledge. But just to overview, so a lot of meats and poultries are going to be up to 165 degrees. Leftovers and casseroles are also up to 165 degrees. And then fish and shellfish and then ham are 145 degrees as well as beef. Rule of thumb, if you are ever not sure and you don't have a way to look and you're in a hurry, just cook it all at 165 degrees and you'll be safe. But it's good to know these because if you're cooking, beef and you don't want it to be dry, if you cook it right at that 145 degrees, you're gonna know you're gonna have a really great product. All right, next is washing hands. This is really important. It's pretty basic, but we wanna make sure we're doing it right. So first you're gonna wet your hands, lather it with soap and water, and really get underneath the fingernails and the knuckles. Rinse and then dry your hands with a single-use paper towel. You're gonna wanna keep the faucet running until after you dry your hands so that you can use the paper towel to turn off the faucet. Okay, and then cross-contamination. This is when we are taking bacteria from one food and basically sharing it with other foods that aren't going to be cooked to a high enough temperature to kill that bacteria. So you really want to avoid that. The kind of easiest way to do this is if you were preparing raw meat or a TCS food that needs to be cooked to a high temperature, and say you were cutting meat on a cutting board and then using that same cutting board or that same knife to cut up vegetables. And that's something we really want to avoid because say we're putting those vegetables into a salad, we're not going to heat up those vegetables and that bacteria can really get somebody sick. So, all right, now I've got a quick scenario for you guys just to think about what we talked about and solidify that knowledge. So you've been tasked with making a batch of chicken vegetable stir fry, and the first thing you need to do is prepare the ingredients by cutting the raw chicken breasts and veggies into bite-sized pieces. Describe the process you would take to complete this task. So I'll give you guys a second to think about it, and then raise your hand if you want to kind of take me through what process you would take.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Are the veggies and chicken being cooked together at the same time?
Yes. Yes.
I feel like, it would be nice if you had 2 different cutting boards. So, like, you could cut the chicken on one cutting board and then, like, go wash your hands and then get a different knife and a different cutting board to chop the vegetables on. But also, if they're all getting cooked together, it's not super important. But
Yes, I'm glad you pointed this out. So, like you said, we don't need to be too concerned about the veggies being cooked on the cut on the same cutting board because they're being cooked to the same temperature. However, a lot of times in facilities they'll have certain cutting boards for certain things. So, like a cutting board for raw meat and a cutting board for veggies. So, I know a lot of our kitchens have that, and it's good to do that because sometimes it's hard to really clean out those cutting boards, right? But yeah, great observation there. All right, and then gloves are really important. We need to know when we're going to be changing out our gloves, when we can keep them on. So always change your gloves between activities to avoid that cross-contamination. And if you're ever touching non-food surfaces, so if you are preparing a salad or something and you forget the carrots that are in the fridge and you need to go open the refrigerator door and go get those carrots and move some boxes around, when you come back you need to change your gloves because you touched lots of non-food surfaces. And then you're going to need to wash your hands before putting on gloves and between changing gloves. And then always make sure that you're replacing your gloves as soon as they become torn or broken. Okay, this is how to use sanitizer. So if you need to sanitize a surface, first thing you're going to want to do is wash it down with a soapy rag or something so you're cleaning off all the food and debris that's on the surface, and rinsing it with clean water, and then using a sanitizer. In our facility we use Quat. And then when you're preparing a sanitizing bucket, rule of thumb, always follow the instructions on the label, but you're going to want to fill the bucket with water and then add the right amount of Quat solution, and then you're going to use a test strip. And usually on the little containers of the test strips, it will show, tell you how much, what the concentration of that needs to be. So just make sure you're always checking that, and then replacing those buckets every 4 hours and making sure the water is staying warm. And then if we always use a 3-compartment sink in all of our kitchens. So just to overview how to do that, we're going to have obviously 3 compartments. The first is going to be wash compartment, second rinse, third sanitizer, and then we also have a sanitizing dishwasher that we use too. So that's pretty self-explanatory, but make sure again that sanitizing compartment is at the right concentration and that the wash water is staying warm. Okay, here's another scenario for you guys. The dishes are piling up at the sink and you've been assigned to wash and sanitize them. The sink's empty and needs to be prepared. What are the steps you would take to wash the dishes?
Go
for it.
So it's the 3-compartment sink, right? So you fill up one with just soapy water for washing, and then one that's clear, just plain water for rinsing, and then one with the sanitizing solution to sanitize, and then place it at air drying.
Yes, perfect. I'm glad you mentioned the air drying, because that's something that I didn't mention before. Yes, after we sanitize them, we need to make sure they have time to air dry and be dry before we start using them again. And we're not using dryers to dry things off. We need to be air drying them because now they're sanitary. Alright, so we are going to play a quick game of Kahoot. If you've never played Kahoot, put the pin into your phone, you're going to go to this Kahoot.it, or you can use the QR code. And once you're logged in, it should pop up here. Yay! Okay, perfect. So questions are going to come up onto the screen. You have on your device, you'll have shapes and colors to go along with the answers, and you just click the one that you feel like is the right answer. And I will read the questions off for you. So time, temperature, control. What is the temperature danger zone? Well done. Yeah, so 41 degrees to 135 degrees. That's where we want to stay out of for more than 2 hours. Which of the following is a TCS food? So we have mayonnaise, sliced cantaloupe, spices, or onions. Well done. Yes, so melons are a TCS food we need to be aware of. How long can a TCS food be held in the danger zone before it needs to be thrown away? 2 hours. Well done, you guys.
Hey.
Nice, Gracie. Alright, what's a safe minimum internal temperature of poultry?
Sorry.
Oh, sorry, no, you're good.
Thanks.
You guys are so fast. You must be like, you must really know your stuff. Good job. What is a safe minimum internal temperature of beef, pork, lamb, or pig? You guys are too fast.
Let's go.
Where are you gonna get in this train? Good job. 145 degrees. What's the safe minimal internal temperature of ground meats? So the correct answer is 160. And the reason for this is because ground meat goes through so much more processing. It has so many more points of contact where it can get contaminated, so it needs to be cooked into a little bit higher temperature. What is the safe minimum internal temperature of eggs?
This is really testing my knowledge, actually.
It's
That's the point.
Yeah, this is so embarrassing.
8. Good job. 160.
I just
Okay,
did
that's
the sorry.
okay. That's why we're doing this, is to practice, and now you won't forget.
I just did fill out the worksheet today.
What's the safe minimal internal temperature of
I got this
fish
one in the
and
bag.
shellfish?
Oh, it's already
5. Good job, Rachel.
Wow.
Last one. Oh wait, no, we have one more afterwards. Safe minimum internal temperature of leftovers. Well done, you guys. 165.
Let's go.
Okay, this is the last one. What's the safe minimum internal temperature of casseroles?
That 150 had to be on there for something.
I don't know.
So 165. Good job. And again, if you're ever like really want to be safe and worried, 165 is always going to be safe. But we have posted in our kitchens little temperature sheets next to the ovens. Alright. Well done, Rachel. Okay, thank you guys for participating in that little game. I have a quick survey here for you to do to let me know how you did and how much we learned today. So thank you for your time, and I hope that you feel confident with your food handling safety skills in the kitchen.